So this week's episode of 48 Hours tells the story of Christie Wilson's 2005 disappearance. A man was convicted of her murder, but it took investigators 15 years to find her body. Erin Moriarty tells us how Wilson's mother has never given up on her daughter's case.
Last summer, investigators Nuno Tavares and Don Murchison, who work for the district attorney in Placer County, California, got a tip that led them to the former home of a convicted killer named Mario Garcia.
The one thing Mario is consistent. He's a consistent narcissistic manipulator.
And Nuno says Garcia has been trying to manipulate detectives since he was found guilty of killing Christie Wilson, a young woman he met in a casino back in 2005. The 27-year-old was last seen leaving that night with Garcia, but he denied having anything to do with her disappearance.
How could she simply disappear after she was with you?
I don't have answers for that.
Convinced Garcia was lying, Christie's mother, Debbie Boyd, went public.
I want my daughter back, and I want her back now.
Years passed, and in 2018, Garcia let Debbie know he wanted to be released early from his 59-year prison sentence, and she considered negotiating with him.
But I was sitting there thinking, what on earth are you doing, Debbie? Get a grip. This would be such a disgrace. He will not use my daughter's body as a bargaining chip.
No one ever guessed that Garcia's own family would play a role in finding Christie's remains. In 2019, the investigators asked Garcia's eldest son, Chris, a teenager in 2005, about his father's movements in the days after Christie went missing.
He saw his dad working on a tractor, working kind of frantically and had kind of a crazed look in his eyes. He was working around the property.
Nuno said Chris never put two and two together, but detectives did, and last summer, they returned to the killer's former property.
We started pulling back about 25 feet, pulling just a couple of inches at a time, went about 18 feet wide, and we stopped everything. We froze everything.
We found Christie. This is a day that we had hoped for. My prayers have been answered. We can now move forward without the torment of the past 15 years.
All right, let's bring in Erin now to answer a few more questions about this case. You know, Erin, I know over the many years that you've worked for 48 Hours, you've spoken to many, many mothers of victims. I don't think it sort of translates the incredible strength that these women often have. Often they are sort of the strongest advocates for their children. They look very strong when they're on TV. But the weight of what they're dealing with, I don't know if it always translates, that they can keep up the fight even in the middle of their extreme pain. This seemed like a battle of nerves between the victim's mother and Mario Garcia. How did that play out over time?
Anne-Marie, it really was. You know, I started on this story when she first disappeared. I've gotten to know Deb Boyd very well. And she is one of these really tough people, but this was tearing her apart. And Mario Garcia had information that he knew she wanted, he knew he had it, but he wasn't going to hand it over because then he'd have to admit he had actually killed her daughter. So it became this battle of nerves, of wits, and not just with the family, but with investigators. At one point, Mario Garcia, when he was sitting in prison, talked about this remote area, knowing that the investigators would go out there and search and just send them out on a wild goose chase. And this went on for 15 years.
You know, people may wonder, why was it so important to find her body? The killer is behind bars. You know, you cannot bring her back. Why do you think it was so important for both investigators and Christie's family to find her?
Well, no question, Anne-Marie, the family was tortured. Debbie Boyd said to me that every night that she went to bed for 15 years, she would say, where did he put her? I mean, she wanted to bury her daughter. She wanted her back. She felt that she had abandoned her daughter. But there was also a legal reason. You know, this was a no-body prosecution. There wasn't a lot of evidence. So Mario Garcia was filing appeal after appeal. If one of those appeals actually was heard and any evidence thrown out, he could walk. And then she'd never find out where her daughter was. So there were a lot of reasons to try to, besides the fact just to prove this guy really did do it.
We saw in your piece that you spoke to Mario Garcia. What was he like during the interview?
Memorable. I mean, I have to say I have to be honest, he was good. He came across very credibly. He had well-crafted answers for everything, so much so, I'm going to be honest, I worried, and so did my producer when we walked away. Again, no body prosecution. I worried, did they get the right guy? But now, as I sit here this morning, I know he was just an extremely good liar.
Wow, that is scary. Looking forward to it, Erin. Thank you very much. So you can watch 48 Hours, The Search for Christie Wilson, tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern on CBS. After it airs, the episode will also be available to stream anytime on CBS All Access.